How's it going, y'all? Welcome to episode 20 of Bonding and Beer. I'm your host, Rolando Nunez, and today we're going to be talking about MMPs. What are they? God knows. Let's go. Okay, guys, this is a little bit of Rolando update. What has Rolando been up to? Well, I haven't traveled lately, which is a good thing. It's not that I don't like to travel, but travel is tiring for me. I prefer to just stay home and chill. So we had a potluck with members of our team. We are, I believe, anywhere between 14 and 17 members in the marketing department, and about 14 or 15 of them brought sweets. We're doing a potluck, and everybody decides to bring a freaking dessert. So we got cookies, we had brownies, we got some 7-layer cake, we had all sorts of sweets. So on average, everyone gained about 3.5 pounds just by eating all the sweets. We had one person who brought tamales, good for her, our shout out to Leanna Mixon, but everyone else brought cookies and stuff. What kind of potluck was this? It was a sweet potluck. So everybody at the end of the potluck had either cavities, insulin issues, and dramatic weight gain, or combination of the three. It doesn't matter. It was awesome. It was a time to share with amongst each other in our team. We love sharing, so we did share some chocolate chip cookies. That was super fun. So if you want to know more about my travels and different topics of discussion regarding dental stuff, beer stuff, or whatnot, you can follow me on Instagram at Roland Bond, and you can always also follow our Bonding and Beer Instagram site at Bonding and Beer. We're on YouTube, Bonding and Beer. We have an email where you can send us your questions and recommendations for beer drinking, bondingandbeer@gmail.com. There is a landing page where you can subscribe to the podcast or the YouTube page, or both. It doesn't matter. Like, share, follow. Let's go. Today's topic is MMPs. We're going to be covering MMPs, what they are, what kind of role they play in restorative dentistry, and so on, right? And we did a poll on our Instagram page, and this was a topic that was, I believe, Jeremy, the producer, just told me that it was the highest voted one. So it's interesting because this is a very scientific topic. This is something that is just embedded in science, and I love that kind of stuff because it's super nerdy, and I love talking about nerdy stuff. So we're going to develop that. But before we get any deeper, let's just crack this beer. Let's see what Jeremy, the producer, and Cam and Chase and Amanda brought to the show today, so we can indulge into a little bit of beer. Let's go. All right, so what beer did the producers bring today, right? So Jeremy, Cam, and Chase and Amanda were involved in getting this beer. We have a little stash, and they pick a beer, and this is the one they picked today, and it's called Snaggletooth. Fits perfectly because Snaggletooth, it's got a little molar, in the can. It's a little molar with a little, diamond-shaped background, red diamond-shaped background. It says Snaggletooth. The full name is Snaggletooth Bandana, and the brewery is called Solemn Oath Brewery from Naperville, Illinois. Naperville is a very bougie town here in the suburbs of Chicago. It's a very nice town. And they have their very own brewery. This is an IPA. It's a 6.5. That means that we're going to be having some fun and having some great conversations, probably by the end of this episode. Now, the description of this beer right here, it says assertive bitterness forged. Look, when you start using fancy words, these words that are difficult to pronounce, and this is when I go like, stop. You are a brewmaster. You're a brewery. You don't need to be a poet. What is it? What it tastes like? Let's go. Assertive bitterness. What does that mean? Forged. Is this metal? Is this metal? I don't think so. What are you guys? Is this thermodynamics? No. Forged with a fresh hop aroma of massive grapefruit. Here we go. We got some fruit going here. Citrus and pineapple as original as they come. Now we got some, tongue twisting stuff here. I don't like this description. I'm just saying. Have I tried this beer before? Yes, I have. I know I've tried this. This is a local beer, a local brew from here in Illinois. Do I remember what kind of score I gave it? I don't, but I know I've tried it. So, we're going to have some fun with it, and we're going to see what's what. So, let's go. Okay, so I am going to crack open this beer right here. Fantastic sound. I got beer all over me. This is just stupid. Somebody just took this and just shook it, and I got beer all over the microphone, all over my face, all over the body. It's just ridiculous. This is probably Cam's doing. He probably shook it and put it in here, and now it's all messed up. Regardless, because we're professionals, we're going to pour this thing accordingly. They're laughing in the back. They're cracking up in the back. All of them, all four of them. But I am going to pour this like a professional. Let's go. Now I smell like IPA, which is fantastic. And again, as a professional, that's a mighty pour right there. A mighty pour. A good head. It's fantastic. It looks great. Of course, there is no spillage in the pouring, but there is a lot of spillage while cracking it open. Because, I am surrounded by people who are just looking for a way to have fun at my expense. So here we go. What does the beer look like? It looks, I want to say darker than a lager. It looks like it is not a light beer, a little bit, it's not hazy. It's very clear. And I don't want to say it's amber. It's just dark yellow. We're going to give it a little sniff. Yeah, there is some citrus. I can feel that citrus, not only on the beer glass, but also on the microphone, because a lot of the beer got spilled on top of the microphone. It's so stupid. And we're going to give it a little sip. Let's see.
Sip, sip, sip.
Oh, yeah. This is good stuff. This is a good IPA. I'm going to put it right here. We're going to start this episode, but we're going to take a little break so I can clean up after this little disaster that was caused by the crew who's in charge of producing this here episode. Come on. The topic of conversation today is MMPs. So we're going to go through what are MMPs? Why do they matter? And this is a question that I get a lot from people who dive into this MMP ordeal. Because that question is still being answered today. Why do they matter? And of course, how do you deal with them? What do you do if these MMPs become important to you as a clinician? What are MMPs? I'm not going to spend too much time explaining, the origin and how many MMPs are there in the body, and, because there is a lot of science, there is some biology, there is some chemistry, and of course, there is a lot of research that has been done about MMPs. But what are MMPs? MMPs are enzymes. MMP, it's matrix metalloproteinase, okay? That's what it stands for. And they are enzymes that they are in your body. And they are indented, okay? These enzymes are dormant. while they are in the dentin. But they are activated when they are exposed to a low pH. And this happens when somebody decides to use a total edge bonding technique, which is basically the application of phosphoric acid to dentin, very low pH, exposing the collagen in the dentin by demineralizing, removing hydroxyapatite, removing the smear layer, and now you activate the MMPs. By activating the MMPs, they are basically going to have this affinity to feed off collagen. They have collagenolytic activity. What does that mean? They eat the collagen. So when you do total etch, MMPs become active and they just go out and eat the collagen. Does this happen immediately? Not necessarily immediately, but it will happen. And this has been shown in many papers in vitro, okay? That's the only way to see it, is in vitro. So what is the effect of this collagenolytic activity? Well, what is being observed is that after MMP activation, the hybrid layer that is created during bonding, which is basically the impregnation of the collagen with the resin that is in the adhesive, that hybrid layer starts to degrade. Okay? And there are reasons for this degradation. There is there is the relationship between the hybrid layer and the water that is coming from the dentin. Just the water that is intrinsically part of the adhesive formula, but also the destruction of the collagen by the MMP. So there are many different factors and variables that will affect that bond layer over time. Okay, so MMPs, the presence of active MMPs is one of them. It's not the main reason. Okay, but it is one of them, and it's something that you can deal with. So when you think about water present in the adhesive formulation, how do you deal with that? Well, you increase the drying time to make sure you evaporate all the water. How do you deal with the water that is coming from the dentin? Well, you really can't, because it's just there. It's going to happen, okay? But you can mitigate the hydrolytic activity of that water by having a more hydrophobic adhesive formula. Now, MMPs, what can you do in order to deactivate them, to neutralize them, to mitigate the activity of these enzymes? And we're going to talk about that in a little later, but I want you guys to understand something. And this is something that to me is very, very important. And this is where I like to start talking about the different things that can have an effect on the clinical performance of a restoration. I don't know if I have mentioned this before, but according to studies done by the National Institute of Health and the recollection of data from different sources, not only scientific sources that have conducted clinical studies under controlled environments, but also sources from insurance here in the U.S. The average clinical performance time, the average time that a direct restoration will last is 5.7 years.
Sip, sip, sip.
Average. Okay? 5.7 years. And if something lasts longer than 5.7 years, and then it is above average. If it lasts less, it's below average. But if it is in that range, it's just average, okay? You're there. The idea is, what is it that you're doing as a clinician to move the needle to make sure that your restorations last longer than 5.7 years. You will hear a lot of people saying, my restorations last 20 years. Well, you're not average then. You're not. It is important to think like that, because If you have that as your starting point, what is it that you're going to include in your restorative protocol in order to move that needle? Is it, rubber dam isolation, using a specific bonding technique, using a specific product to clean the preparation prior to the bonding procedure, using specific materials to make sure the restoration is properly cleaned and isolated and bonded, using a specific, piece of equipment or a little, let's say, a different type of sectional matrix in order to achieve a better contact. What is it that you're doing? A good curing light in order to achieve proper polymerization in deep areas. All of these things that you do could have or should have an effect on the overall clinical performance of the restoration, okay? The less thorough you are, the more prone for restorations to fail, faster. So are MMPs part of this whole process? I believe they are. Can you blame MMPs for the failing of the restorations alone? No, that doesn't make any sense. But it's a combination of things, and MMPs play a role in, having an impact on the clinical performance of the restorations for sure. And why is this important? Because, again, when I talk to lecturers, to professors, they say, well, restorations last longer. I've seen restorations that last, more than 5.7 years. And that's okay. And maybe there were a lot of things that were considered when those restorations were being made. But not everyone is as thorough. Not everyone cares about the same things. Not everyone cares about, hey, I'm going to take a little longer to do this restoration, but hopefully by investing a few more minutes, that restoration can last a few more years, okay? And to me, that's what really makes a difference. So, again, going back to MMPs, which is a very specific thing that happens during the restorative process at a very specific moment using a very specific bonding technique, which is total etch, low pH, MMP activation. When this happens, they go like, let's go. And they start having collagen for lunch, okay? And it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Whether you believe it or not, it is going to happen. Now, the question is, can you mitigate that? What can I do to stop MMPs from eating the collagen that I have exposed by using a total etch technique? Well, there are many ways to deactivate MMPs, different ways. I'm going to talk about two ways that are very cost effective, easy to do, and definitely effective, okay? The first way is to use chlorhexidine after etching, okay? So you etch with phosphoric acid for whatever amount of time you decide to etch. Total etch is, placing phosphoric acid on both enamel and dentin simultaneously. You rinse it off, keep your dentin moist, and then you apply chlorhexidine. And you just leave the chlorhexidine there for about 20 seconds, undisturbed. You're not going to rinse it. You remove the excess as you would remove the excess water. You can use Hyvac or maybe a little foam pellet, cotton pellet, and then you apply your adhesive. What the chlorhexidine is doing is deactivating the MMPs, okay? Deactivating the MMPs. And by deactivating the MMPs, you're not going to have that collagen degradation, phenomena if you do that. And then you place your adhesive and then you place your composite, okay? And when you do this, it's only going to take you 20 seconds, an extra step. You don't need to light cure. You don't need to activate it. You don't need to apply it with any sort of scrubbing motion. You just let it dwell right there. What you need to make sure is that you're using products that are designed for cavity, cleansing. There are a few products out there. I'm going to name two. Bisco has one called Cavity Cleanser. It's 2% chlorhexidine digluconate. And there is one by Ultradent called Concepsis. Those two I know of. You cannot use chlorhexidine that is designed for perio treatment because that will not work. Okay, and actually that chlorhexidine could have a negative impact on bonding. That one that is used for perio, on mouthwashes. You got to use the one that is used for restorative. It's a 2% digluconate. Bisco has it. Ultradent has it. So there you have it. You got options, right? And then you apply your bonding agent. You go through the restorative process. Another way to deactivate MMPs is by using an etchant that contains BAC, benzalkonium chloride. Benzalkonium chloride is a disinfectant agent that Lysol has BAC. It's a surface cleaner, right? So we here at Bisco have included BAC to our etchants. And they have been, they've been developed with BAC forever. Our etchants have always contained BAC as part of their formula. And the idea was, at the beginning, was to etch and clean, disinfect at the same time. And it does this. However, we found out that BAC will also deactivate MMPs. So now when you're etching, you're cleaning, and you're deactivating MMPs all at once. You don't need to go an extra step. So if MMPs are something that you're concerned about or something that draws your attention, it's like, how do I mitigate these? How important is this? Well, you can go the chlorhexidine way or you can go the BAC way in the etchant. If you decide to go with chlorhexidine, that means that you're going to have to add an extra step where you're going to clean and deactivate the MMPs by the application of chlorhexidine. If you decide to go the BAC way, which is included in your etchant, you're etching, you're cleaning, and deactivating MMPs all at once. Either way, if this is important to you, these are two different solutions. Again, one adds an extra step, the other one doesn't, but it's up to you. Okay, I don't know if there are other etchants that contain BAC. That's why I don't give another option. Our etchants here at Bisco contain BAC. If you're interested in knowing more about the effect of BAC in etchants or the effect of chlorhexidine regarding MMP deactivation, feel free to send us an email, bondingandbeer@gmail.com. You can send your questions via DM or on Instagram @bondingandbeer. Or you can send us your question through our landing page, and the link is in the description. We will definitely love to hear from you, and we will answer any of your questions, okay? Now, again, going back to the full restoration, you have different factors that will affect the clinical performance. Again, isolation, bonding technique, the materials that you use, the equipment that you use, the little different, ancillary products that you use. So many different things. So when you hear people saying, oh, MMPs have no impact on the restorations, well, there aren't necessarily a lot of clinical data regarding this, but what is a fact is that MMPs, when they're active, they will definitely have an impact on your bonding layer, on your hybrid layer, because they will go to town on that collagen. They will definitely have that collagen for lunch and dinner and breakfast as long as they're active. So that will be one of the many variables that have an effect on the bonding layer. In that, degradation of the bonding layer can also be part of what makes a direct composite restoration last longer or a shorter period of time. This is something to consider. There is never only one thing. There are many things that when combined will have a positive effect or a detrimental effect. Or some things that you do will have a positive effect and other things that you do could have a negative effect. It all depends on your protocol, on your approach, but MMPs are a thing. They exist. They're not, they're not the chupacabras. They do exist, okay? They're not some ghost. Talking about MMPs and talking about this type of, phenomena that happens during bonding is something that I have a lot of passion for. And I've been lecturing about this for a while. I remember in one of the lectures that I gave, one guy came out, he said, well, Rolando just spoke about MMPs. My restorations last 20 years. First of all, we don't care how long they last, Your patients maybe, they care, but I don't care. Because you always hear people say these things. And what are you trying to say? That you're better than the next guy? Okay, you're not above average. Good for you. But there are so many people out there that they want to know and they want to improve what they're doing. So this whole condescending thing where it's like, my restorations last 20 years. Well, good for you, my guy. Good for you and your patients. What are you doing? Are you having a snaggletooth? Are you enjoying life with your 20 years of, clinical performance of each restoration? Or are you sharing what you're doing with your peers and say, hey, these are my cases and this is what I'm doing and I'm having these results? I think that's pretty cool. I think that's pretty fair. From a scientific perspective, we consider everything that is incorporated into building up a tooth, okay? Bonding is of the essence. And MMPs are a thing. They need to be considered. So let's wrap it up. MMPs are a real thing. For sure. For sure. Now, they are easily activated when you use total etch, but they can be easily deactivated. Okay? So as soon as they become a problem, an issue, you can take care of that pretty much immediately. Pretty much immediately. All right? And to me, the most important thing is we must do all within our power to move that needle, that performance needle, to our advantage, which will bring a better standard of care to our patients, okay? Or to your patients. I haven't practiced in a pretty long time. To your patients. My job is to understand what's going on in the lab and to provide that information to you. And you do with that information whatever you see fit. But the main idea is to move that needle to your advantage. So if something is supposed to last 5.7 years, what can we do to make it last a little longer? And that way you are performing clinical dentistry that is above average. That's the main goal. That's the main goal of this podcast, which is one of the things that we do in order to move that needle. Now, I'm going to give you a road tip. If MMPs are something that is of your interest and, you're confused or you're like, oh my God, do I really need to care about this? Just incorporate chlorhexidine as part of your protocol, or use an etchant with BAC. It's not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt. And why not? If you use chlorhexidine, what you're doing is disinfecting. And if you use an etchant with BAC, you're doing your total etch and you are cleaning and you are deactivating MMPs all at once. So this is something to consider, okay? But most important, if you're listening to this episode of this here podcast and you're like, MMPs, where do I find information about that? It's all scientific reading. I'm willing to share information, so you can contact us. Email, direct message, Instagram, through our landing page, regardless. But you need to read. This is not something that your peer can explain to you. You need to read and understand. It is not that simple. It's a little bit complex, okay? But the more you understand about it, the more cautious you're going to be, okay? So Snaggletooth has helped me through this episode, and let's go. All right, my guys, we're going to do the beer review. And the beer is Snaggletooth Bandana. First question is always, what do you think about this beer? I think it's great. The one that I'm drinking, it's awesome. The one on my body is great. The one on the floor is great. The one on the desk is great. And the one on the microphone is also great. Why? Because these fools thought it was funny to shake the beer. What are we doing? What's next? Mentos inside a Coca-Cola? Regardless, I think this is a great beer. Good job. Good job. What was the name of this thing? Solemn Oath Brewery. Did it match the brewery description? No, because the brewery description, it says, forged with a fresh hop aroma of massive grapefruit. First of all, what is this? This is not a sword. This is not a knife. You don't forge a beer. You brew it. So did it match? No. What are we, Vikings? What are we talking about? What is this, medieval times? You know, knights on top of a horse swinging their swords and trying to kill people through metal armor? No. This is the Middle Ages? Forged. You know, hey, listen. I know you're a brewmaster. You probably got a long beer and you're all tatted. Oh, you think, oh yeah, I drink from a cow's horn and I forge beer. No, you don't. You brew water with hops and malt, and you create a fantastic concoction. But you're not a metallurgic engineer, okay? So you need to chill. It didn't match anything. Is it citrusy? Yes. Is it fine? Yes. Is it fantastic? Yes. But you're not foraging anything. You need to chill. Now, I'm going to give it a score. I'm going to give this guy a 4.25. Let's go Snaggletooth. If you have the chance to try Snaggletooth, if you come to Illinois, I don't know if they have it outside of Illinois, but if you have a chance to try Snaggletooth from Illinois, give it a shot. It's absolutely great. 4.25. What is the perfect scenario to try this beer? It will be perfect if I open it and half of it doesn't land in my body, on my table, on my computer, on my microphone, and on the floor. That will be the perfect scenario. But unfortunately, we didn't have that today. You know what I'm saying? All right, we're going now into the Q&A section. We got a question here. Again, if you have a question, you can send it to bondingandbeer@gmail.com. You can send us a DM at bondingandbeer, on Instagram. Or you can go into our landing page. The link is in the descriptor. And you can, submit your question, recommendation, whatever the case may be. There are many ways that you can contact us. So this is a question from Dr. Joe Vasquez. I wonder if Dr. Joe Vasquez is related to Dr. Adriana Vasquez. Adriana Vasquez is married to this guy. You know what I'm saying? So this might be someone who's related. We don't know anything about Joe, but if you are a cousin, welcome to the family, my guy. Let's go. I read a lot about studies regarding MMPs, but they are mainly in vitro studies. What happens clinically? This is a great question. It's still being researched. There's a lot of conflicting data because MMPs are real. They do have a detrimental effect on your bond layer. Is this effect that we see in vitro, is it going to translate into a clinical performance effect? That is difficult to say. But I've been blessed to, with the opportunity to talk to people that conduct high-end research on many different areas of restorative dentistry, okay? I've been doing this for 20-odd years, so I know interesting people from all over the world. And I've met guys like Lorenzo Breschi from University of Bologna in Italy. I've met guys and talked to guys like David Pashley here in the U.S., he's in the Medical Center of Georgia. I think Dr. Pashley is retired by now. I don't know. But I've talked to them about this specific topic. And, their answer is like, this is what we're seeing and this is what we're recommending. Okay? remember, this is one thing amongst the many things that can have an effect on the clinical performance. Can you move the needle? Does applying chlorhexidine really create does it hinder your ability to keep going? Does using an etchant with, BAC, is that a negative thing? I don't think so. So if it's something that it's on your radar, if it's something that you read, if it's something that, Dr. Joe Vasquez, if this is something that you're thinking about, just take care of it and move on. Just move on. And that's the recommendation I give to people whenever I'm done lecturing about this topic. Just use your chlorhexidine, you're cleaning, and you are deactivating MMPs, or use an etchant with BAC. You're etching, you're cleaning, and deactivating MMPs all at the same time. Either way, you are going to take care of the problem. Is it a problem? It's an in vitro problem, okay? And you can take care of it, all right? So there is the answer to Dr. Vasquez, my dear cousin. Let's go. Dr. Vil Vandry, are MMPs being deactivated in modern adhesive system? Like, what I gather from this question is like, are adhesive system considering MMPs in order to formulate, okay? There are different areas of research out there. And let me tell you something. And this actually, you can, tie it up with Dr. Vasquez's question. There are some companies that include MMP's activation as part of the design of their adhesive in order to take care of it by adding either chlorhexidine or BAC into their formulas, Are they effective? They are promising, they are promising. They're interesting. I think that you don't need to develop an adhesive that will deactivate MMPs. I think that by etching dentin with an etchant that contains BAC, you're good to go. You know what I'm saying?
Sip, sip, sip.
But, either way, yes, there are some formulations out there that take MMP activation into account as part of their formulation. And theoretically, their formula should deactivate MMP while performing the bonding, okay? So I think that's very, very interesting. And the last question here, how do you celebrate Valentine's Day? That's a great question, I've gotten into a little bit of trouble because I gave my wife kind of like a low score on one of my episodes. And, I said, oh, well, she's a solid 6 and I'm a 3, and I'm going to take that back. She's not a 6. She's a 100 million in my heart. Okay. Now, with that being said, when I said 6, I was being kind of honest to the world. Because if you take Megan Fox, for example, she is at 9.5. You know what I'm saying? And Adriana is not 9.5. But I do love her. So in my heart, she is 1 million. And I will definitely prefer to spend my Valentine's Day with her rather than with any other person in the world because she fills up my life and she's a great person to be around. She's funny, entertaining, and, and she understands me and she makes me a better person, makes me a better man, a better professional, a better father. So that's how I spend my Valentine's Day, okay, with her. Usually I buy her a gift from CVS Pharmacy or Walgreens, one of them chocolate thingies. I give it to her and she's super happy. So she's also low maintenance. What else do you want in life, my guy? Just a little chocolate and let's go. That about wraps it up for this episode of Bonding and Beer. Be sure to like, to subscribe, to follow, and to share. And right now I'm going to finish this bandana. I got so much beer on my sweater that I can squeeze it and probably get another half a pint, in this thing. This is crazy. This is crazy, my guy. I'm Rolando Nunez, your host. Let's go. Snaggletooth is the beer of dentist. I'm a dentist.